We rocking and rolling?
We're rolling.
We're live. Actually, we're not live. You're watching this after we've already edited it all together.
Yeah, not a live crowd.
Yeah.
Be a lot of editing. What's up, guys?
Yeah, just the same.
Living the dream, man.
Amen, brother.
Living the frickin' dream.
Amen. We'll have a Bitburger tonight.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good one. This is Shiner's Prickly Pear beer. I'm not huge on prickly pear beers, but I was curious as to what Shiner's take on it was, and this is pretty good.
Yeah, none of their fruitier stuff is too sweet, which is cool because a lot of times you run into...
Yeah, it becomes cloyingly sweet to drink,
you know, too sugary, syrupy.
Yeah, anything that's like a Rodler type beer or a Shandy type beer that has a fruit adjunct to it, it's real easy to get them too sweet.
Didn't they have a lemon one or lime one or something?
Probably.
Yeah.
There, I'll tell you right now, man. In American beer making right now, there are no rules. I mean, there never have been, but right now there really aren't any rules.
This
whatsoever.
is beautiful. I can't do cold things right now with the chemo, so I left a couple of beers out for myself. And here in my world's fourth best podcast host, I put that up to the camera because look how beautiful that is. That's perfect.
Fantastic.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers. Here's to the fourth best podcast in the world.
Yeah,
that's right. At least the fourth best one we know of, and I only know like 4 guys that do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of local content providers. A scolding for you and props to George coming up here.
Oh, man.
I know. So there's a channel, Ride with GNR, just words ride with and letters GNR all together. George, local motorcycle guy. Mm-hmm. I met George where he works. I saw a Concord 14, same year, exact same bike, like off the assembly line together. And I saw it parked in the driveway, and it was parked up on the sidewalk, so I assumed it was an employee. Went into the store, and I go, hey, whose bike is that? And they go, that guy over there. And, dude, it was Bromant right here. And it turns out he fits right in with us. He's also a piano tuner. So I'm like, all right, this dude's a weirdo. He's gonna fit right in.
Yeah, he's going to fit right in with this group.
So, yeah, George is a super cool guy. You've met George, right?
I don't know that I have. Yeah.
Probably because of the motorcycle.
We need to get him in here for a podcast is what we need to do.
We've had that talk.
Okay.
George, he travels a lot and went through some family changes, buying and selling of homes and stuff like that, and they're kind of settled in. He's ready to do other stuff, working for himself, I believe. Anyway, George shot an incredible video of the big boy, the train that went through Big Bend country. Best one I've seen, and put it up on YouTube, and it's fantastic. So I may link it, I may not. It does weird things when I link outside on YouTube with the algorithm. I don't understand that.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't understand it either, but you have to be careful what you link. And
it may be all right with George. But anyway, George is not on any other form of social media. Like, you can barely text the guy. I mean, we text quite a bit, but no Facebook, nothing like that. So this group and all my podcast guys, almost everybody's on Facebook. We forgot to tell George about the Tim Kreitz Adventures meetup.
Yeah, I know.
So,
and that was one of those deals where I made you an admin and Britt an admin and Cliff an admin of the event on Facebook. And I invited as many people as I thought as I could think of, and then I went, okay, I need to take a break from this because that turned into like an hour of my night trying to get all the invites sent out. And I was going to revisit it, and I was going to put on. We have a little secret group on Facebook that's just an IM group, and I was going to say, I told you guys, I made you guys admins to invite people, and then I didn't even think about George not having a Facebook. A Facebook page. Either way, he got left out of the loop, and I felt real bad. In fact, when we got to the meetup night and all the people started showing up, I looked at Matt and I said, "Guess who? I forgot
We forgot George."
So
and it was cold, and I was the only one that rode a motorcycle. And
it was crazy cold.
Yeah. Anyway, good times.
Yeah, it was a good time. So George, we say all of that long preface to this podcast simply to say we're sorry you did not get an invite. It was purely an oversight. Please don't let that affect your decision to join us for a podcast and hang out.
Yeah, we got to do a ride and a podcast, and George is a fantastic guy. So anyway, he's that's going to bring us to our topic. We're going to talk about nuclear missiles in backyards in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got them, or we used to have them.
We used to have them, and I don't know. This is kind of a fail project because tried to get us on one abandoned site that I can't find that anyone else has ever documented. Long story, and I'll get to it.
Yeah,
didn't work out. And there's just not much to do on this other than talk about it and show a few pictures. There are some silos that we're going to talk about that I want you to do a TKB episode, preferably when I'm feeling well enough to go and get everybody there. So
yeah, I would love to do that. There are a couple of places we've talked about along this very lines, U.S. military history and dormant military sites where we'd like to go and film an episode of Tim Kreitz Adventures or whatever. Just go see them, if nothing else. And we have hit roadblock after roadblock on this stuff.
Yeah,
the first major one, I know you had trouble with that other nuclear missile site, but the first one that we ran into big problems with was when we tried to get into the PAVE-PAWS site north of El Dorado.
Yeah, and that's on the list to talk about today. We tried PAVE-PAWS. I tried one of the Nike sites. I've tried 6, but I'm sure they get bombarded with crap like that, and I understand. But I think we can cover it well enough. I did find some stuff that I've not seen on the internet that I'm going to show here. It's not that big of a deal, but. To preface all this, we always heard about secret missiles all over Texas, crap we hear on the school bus. And I remember hearing Alpine and stuff like that. It all makes sense because every movie you see, it's in a cornfield in Nebraska somewhere. Well, it turns out up around Abilene, Sweetwater, we had both the Nike-Hercules and the Atlas F in the 60s. Yeah. And sort of preface this, so U.S., Soviet Union, both obtained nukes. The only way to deliver a nuke at the time was to put it on an airplane, fly it over, and drop it on somebody.
Right.
Cruise missiles were in infancy, ballistic ICBMs, none of that had been thought of yet. So how do you deal with that? Same way we dealt with air threats before was AAA batteries.
Yeah.
So there used to be AAA batteries in some neighborhoods. The big cannons, anti-aircraft artillery, the big cannons that shot 40 millimeter Bofors with flak, and they would shoot stuff down. So you got to see it coming. You got to call people. You got to run down the hill, load the thing up, and fire blindly into the sky. So what came next were better radar systems, and they got bigger and better, broader. And then the Nike came out, which was a missile designed to intercept bombers, and then intercept
other missiles.
Yeah, to some degree,
like the Nike Ajax.
Yeah. And so at one point, they put these missile sites around probable targets, big cities, missile bases, stuff like that, Air Force bases. And then it lasted for a short time, less than a decade, and the technology got to the point where we didn't need it anymore. The missile ranges got better on ours. They kind of threw their hands up in the air, and they said, well, if X happens, there isn't anything we can do about it, so we don't need this.
Right.
So it came and went. We're going to talk about it, but they did pop up in Texas for a while.
They did.
We got a couple. So
yeah, the Atlas F site was near where Dyess Air Force Base now is. It's actually at Clyde.
Yeah, I had to write all this crap down.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the Atlas F first.
There, you can, if you're the right type of person who's into the right type of hobby, you can get access to one of those Atlas F missile silos.
Yeah,
if you're a diver.
Well, actually, they rent it out according to the website as an Airbnb.
Really?
Yeah, that they've refinished, and also the cruise spaces. I forget what they call them, but there's 2 levels. One is, if I remember right, living space, berthing space, and then another's gear, and then separate room for the command center.
Right.
There's a tour online. I forgot the name of the guy that produced the video, but if you just search Atlas F Missile Tour, you'll get to one that's done by a pro videographer, and I think it is the one that's owned by the Family Scuba Center here.
Okay.
That's in Abilene, but it's a former missile tech of some kind that walks through the whole thing.
Okay.
And it's amazing. You'll see it's a gray-haired guy in a jacket.
Yeah.
Walking.
So what happened was after that silo complex was abandoned for a while, because of the aquifer underneath and the wells underneath. One or more of those, probably all of them, for everything I know, they filled partially with water.
Yeah.
And they became diving spots for
Right.
scuba divers because there's not a lot of places to scuba dive around.
100 something feet deep.
Yeah.
Where's this at?
Abilene.
Abilene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
near Clyde.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Atlas F, I think was our first ICBM. I'm weak on this kind of missile stuff, but it was our first. It was nuclear capable, single warhead, go up into space, let go of a warhead. I forget which one, and supposedly hit a target. It was liquid fueled. Stage and a half. I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
They tried it in several different configurations. The Atlas started out as the X-11, I believe. It was an experimental missile, and then they tried a bunch of different fuels, different numbers of motors. It was fueled originally with alcohol and liquid oxygen as the oxidizer, much like a V2. A lot of that technology came from.
Well,
stolen
this was
V2s.
during the early, von Braun.
Yeah, this is early 60s.
We were trying to explore space and blow shit up. So
right, exactly. Yeah, this is 61,
Turn my
62.
headphones down just a bit.
You need them down?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah. We get all excited
go.
when we talk about U.S. military history.
No, I mean that's fine. It's you guys are in the room yelling here, and I'm here to just amplify this.
Okay, sorry.
I'll try to
that's
calm
good.
down my enthusiasm.
I like the enthusiasm. I'm just like, okay, everything's just
once
killing
our voices warm up, and Tim has just a perfect vocal zone for any microphone,
just
and
the way
just
I
saw us
am.
through us. But
but that was the thing is then they decided, well, let's try some different fuels. They ended up going to gasoline with liquid oxygen as the oxidizer.
I saw kerosene.
Kerosene, and then I think they settled on JP4 and alcohol at one point. I don't know what the final fuel ended up being in the F series of the missile, but yeah, it was a liquid fueled rocket that went through a whole bunch of different configurations simply because we were in the infancy of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Bunch of different versions of the missile.
This guy explained that it was a very unique design in that it was actually a balloon that was filled with the fuels and pressurized, that there was no internal structure. And he said you won't see a static model very often. If you do, it has an artificial structure, like you'll see rivets and things holding it together that weren't there. So, and then whenever you see the videos, if you guys look, there's a test where they bring them up to readiness, and it actually doesn't launch out of the ground. It comes up level.
They bring it up level with the ground.
And it shows the test in Roswell. So we're right between. So, you got Roswell, and it was Walker Air Force Base, and then Dyess, and Midland's, right in the middle. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and while they're fueling it before a launch, you can see it, boiling out vapor and everything. So they're monsters. And it actually, this guy says one of the successes of it, they were never launched outside of testing until none of them were used operationally, but it went into the Mercury program. And I don't remember how 50, 60 something of them were built, and they were pretty much all flown. Yeah, they were flown in the space program. Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, they. I'm trying to think of which version of the rocket it was that ended up in using for orbital flight. But yeah, that and the Redstone as well. The Redstone ended up in the Mercury program too. So there were a lot of early rockets that. They figured out that the Redstone was a pretty good long-range missile, but it wasn't intercontinental. Obviously, that technology just did not exist at the time of the Redstone. The Redstone is the Model T of the U.S. rocketry program. So,
You about to say something? Okay.
No.
It was interesting to me to read this, thinking about the logistics of all of it. The Atlas F, several variants of the Atlas F was the intercontinental ballistic missile. The sites here active 1961 and 1964. And it said on some reference that there were 12 sites and there's 8 on the map. You can Google for KMZ files for Google Earth, Nike and Atlas, Titan, all of the sites. I'll show you right where they are. And all these sites we're going to talk about, Atlas and Nike, when it was over with, they sealed everything up and pitched the keys to I think mostly governments, like school systems and cities
Right.
and stuff like that. Some sold, some didn't. And we'll get to that in a Grind My Gears episode. But yeah, I had to write all this down. 7,000-mile range, and they were scattered out so much among different groups because of communications of the day and for redundancy. So they weren't all, in one batch. They were all standing in a cluster when the U.S. got machine gunned by the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. The guy that in the video I'm talking about, I should have written his name down. The old missile commander or missile tech that gave the walkthrough. He said there were people in the U.S. that were critical of the Atlas program because they believed it was a secret U.S. intent for a first strike. But we had learned in prior nuclear testing about EMP, kind of sort of by accident, and related to Nike, which I didn't know. I actually learned something new in this and remembered it. But it's a Faraday room below. It's shielded to protect the electronics,
Right.
so it'll still work. But it is, for those of you who didn't grow up at any part in the Cold War, is very sobering to watch all that crap and then go watch tours of Soviet stations.
Yeah.
There's one in the Ukraine that's amazing. It's an incredible video that these guys would sit in these silos, and if you're one crew, you have one missile, you pop it, and you're done. Now what? And they would have, a way to sit in there for a while and see if you want to poke your head out, I guess. But
Right.
other than that, it's all over with.
Yeah, those were strange times. Growing up in the Cold War in general was something that, while it sucked, when in the 80s, early 80s in particular, we went to bed every night thinking, well, a nuclear war could be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things in popular culture that were happening that were reinforcing those fears. The fears were legitimate. We could have gone to nuclear war with the Soviets in the early 80s very easily. Do you guys remember The Day After, the TV movie The Day After?
That was horrifying, man, at the time. You hadn't seen that?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, you got to see that, man.
See, I haven't seen that, and as someone who didn't really experience the Cold War, I don't think I've really ever had that kind of feeling or really known that mindset.
Right. And I'm not saying it was a good thing to have to grow up that way, but it gave you some perspective.
Yeah.
It made you think about things a certain way. That movie was, even though if you watch it now, in fact, I think you can probably watch it here on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on one of the Amazon, whatever. I ran across it the other day.
So it's dated, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a 1982 made-for-TV movie. Or it might have been 83, but I'm pretty sure it was 82. And it has Jason Robards and a very young Steve Guttenberg is in it. So it's got a little bit of that as far as big names and people who go on to be stars. But it is essentially a chronology of a war between the Soviet Union and the USA. It doesn't say who launched first or what the circumstances were, like these nebulous circumstances as to what was causing the war. And it never says we fired first or they fired first. It doesn't lay that kind of blame. It's about the people and the people who survived and how they dealt with this sort of post-apocalyptic situation that they had been placed in. And it was very frightening, and it was very convincing at the time. And I remember my parents allowing me to stay up. I think it was a Sunday night movie.
Yeah, it was. It was an evening, the family movie thing.
Right. And there was a lot of talk on the national stage about the families should get together and watch this movie. So my parents wanted me to watch it. My brother was still a little bit too young. And I didn't sleep that night. It had such an effect on me, and we were already so scared of nuclear war with the Soviets on a daily basis that I did not sleep all night. And it sucked at school the next day, but everybody was talking about it. And I later found out, this is also on YouTube and various other places, that Nightline with Ted Koppel was after the local news, and they dedicated an entire episode with a panel of experts to just talking about the movie and where we were as the USA and the Soviet Union in our relationships and our diplomacy. How close were we to this happening, and how accurate was the movie? And there was a lot of pomp and circumstance around it. It had a huge pop culture effect, that movie did. So you should see it for that reason, if nothing
One
else.
thing that I find kind of interesting that you're saying, and this is going to be kind of off topic of the actual subject, but you're saying that there was, I guess, just a real fear of this type of thing happening,
Legit.
and as like I said, as someone who's never really experienced that, it's kind of interesting for me to kind of look at that, because you see it in pop culture, and you'll see it just kind of looking back at your different movies, your different shows, and everything, even in the books and everything. That I know that it was there, but it always seems to be kind of like, it's there, but it's in the back of the mind kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not something that I think that schools and I think that parents are making children aware that we have this huge nuclear arsenal, and so do the former Soviets as well, and also now China does, and now all these rogue nations like Pakistan has them. So it's a real danger, but it's in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's not a large scale threat like it was. We worry about somebody figuring out how to fashion an atomic hand grenade, which we know can be done because our army did it in the 50s, and walking into a place and blowing the place up with some kind of a dirty bomb. Those are the fears. Or we get worried about, Israel and Syria, or the Palestinians having a nuclear exchange. But we don't worry. When we were kids, we worried about it on a global scale. It was a complete, total war, thousands of missiles on each side of the fight launching at the same time, and within a half hour, civilization as we know it no longer exists.
And I guess for you guys going through all that was a fear that was up front and center through everything? Or
to put it in perspective, if you picture what 9/11 is in your life.
Yep.
So the Cuban Missile Crisis was the 9/11 of
our parents.
And I don't mean, obviously, folks, in terms of lives lost or tragedy or anything else. It was the peak incident in this global worry.
Yeah.
We came this close to a full nuclear altercation with the Soviets during the Soviet
that's when it
crisis.
became real, because you understand, when I get online and I watch, all the old atomic test video and stuff like we're going to talk about, to see what younger people are talking about, how stupid we are and mankind just tries to destroy itself. Well, the way we learned nukes was by testing them. And they didn't get, sometimes you don't learn about the long term till after it's done, but they did blow up. I can't remember how many nukes have been popped worldwide, but there have been a bunch of them. But you hear about that. And also at the time, all of this was a closely guarded secret. So no one knew for sure, except for those in the know, how far the Soviets could actually shoot, how accurate they would be, how much time we have. This was all kind of up in the air. And what they released to the public today may not be any good tomorrow. But when they parked them offshore of Cuba, that freaked everybody out. So our parents remembered that and dug bomb shelters and all. So we're born, a decade or so after that. It's very real. And you watch any 80s production, and the Russians are the bad guys. And you watch it on both sides. I encourage everybody to watch Yushchenko's show. Sergei Sputnikov, I've talked about him a lot. Actually had a cool email conversation with him the other day. They were doing the same thing. I mean, it was going on both ways, the politics and the propaganda and all this, and everybody was terrified. And so, that's the best way I could put it in there. It's like 9/11 and how everybody feels about terrorism and safety and such now compared to those days. It's the same thing.
Okay.
So the Atlas was our nuke, and it's interesting. Nobody really knows how well all this stuff would have worked.
Right. We know theoretically there were some tests on the Atlas, high altitude tests and reentry tests and that sort of thing. But there was always a question about that warhead as to whether it would have worked
Yeah.
in the Atlas F design, because it came in at 14,000 knots.
Oh yeah, yeah. I forgot about that.
It re-entered and was supposed to hit its target at 14,000 knots. So that's what 4.5 nautical miles a second, something like that. There was always a big question about whether or not the materials, which were again a closely guarded secret, would actually hold up to the heat of those speeds, and if they did hold up, whether or not the heat would cause a premature detonation of the warhead or cause the warhead not to detonate. There were a lot of questions about that technology that thankfully never got answered. But we moved past the Atlas design pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it was just in service for like 4 years, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 60.
Something
like
like
that.
Down
61, 64. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, as the Atlas F.
I think it was completely taken out. The Atlas airframe was completely taken out of service around 66, right?
Yeah, it went into it all went to NASA.
Yeah.
Damn, there it went. The Minuteman came. Titan Minuteman, one of those.
Yeah.
Minuteman.
Yep.
1 Minuteman, 2 Titan. Anyway, whatever reason now. What happened is the ranges and dependability and everything, and then we got MIRVs, the more than one actual nuclear device per missile. So I forget how many we're up to now, how they could, the W-50 whatever, they could pop 10 of them out of one, and they would also pop decoys.
Yeah.
There would be decoy bombs in addition to real ones, the actual warheads that fell. That's where I was going with this. It was serious enough before the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wait, hold on. Did I say 4.5 knots a minute? I meant 4.5 knots a second.
I wouldn't
anyway,
do the math.
sorry
I can't
about
do
that.
math.
Anyway, I apparently
See,
can't
there
either.
it went, man. You scared my idea away. This was such a critical thing that these complexes are a feat. I mean, they're deep, they're steel, reinforced concrete, a lot of technology, the Faraday box, all that. Plotting, acquisition of the land. They built those things in like less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. All of them.
Yeah.
Poof, they were there. This missile silo, operational. Oh, one of the guys, again, the SF-88 site video, I encourage you to watch that, said they really did and do move nuclear materials, nuclear weapons, parts and such in fake 18-wheelers.
Yeah.
That say Piggly Wiggly and Safeway, just
Right.
like they didn't close
I have
encounters.
I have a story about that. Yeah.
He said the guy hinted that they that if you look closely at them, they're armored and all. But moving on to testing and the Nike. So for air defenses, we had the Nike for an anti-aircraft device. The first one was Nike Atlas, which was liquid.
Yeah.
I got to make this joke.
Hit me.
The Nikes were, of course, identifiable by the swoop on the side.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the
Yep, you're definitely a millennial.
definitely, yeah. The Nike Atlas, it was liquid fueled, wasn't again, we're back to liquid and all the problems that caused. It's tough to use. Then they developed a solid booster, and that became the Hercules. Mm-hmm. So the difference is, if you don't know, if you're not familiar, like model rockets are by and large all solid fuel. So they make rocket fuel and they press it into a pellet, and it burns. It oxidizes itself. It does everything. It works in space. It works underwater. It works in the air.
Yeah.
Does everything on its own.
One of the most popular rocket engines for amateur rocketry is actually a gunpowder.
Yeah,
engine.
it's a pressed black powder pellet. Yeah. And I think these were aluminum perchlorate, same as the space shuttle, or very similar deal. But anyway, once they did that, you don't need a whole lot of support gear. You don't have to worry about fueling. You don't have to worry about the hazards. You don't have to worry about a lot of crap above ground with vapors and all, because you can take these things, put them in a truck, stick them in a shed. All temperatures across the U.S., freezing to hot, humid, not humid, and stick a match to it, and they'll they'll shoot the rocket. So
Yeah.
then we had Hercules sites everywhere. But I had to write down the name of the test as I've seen the video. Operation Fishbowl was the one they popped in the air. It was an airburst nuke.
Uh-huh.
And what was interesting about that, it was a Nike missile. The Nike is also surface-to-surface capable. So you can shoot the air and you can shoot the ground with it. And they fired a 10 kiloton payload that was there for a while. They were experimenting with what's the word I'm looking for, like excavation type stuff.
They were looking for like in Operation Plowshare, where they were looking for non-war uses for nuclear
it was
weapons.
One of those warheads, but they shoved it in a Nike and they fired it and they detonated it at altitude. And that's the one, if you look it up, the nuclear air burst, they found out it didn't do as much on the ground as they thought. So you could pop one of these over city and it's not going to vaporize everyone the way you think about a typical air burst, which is set. They actually detonate nukes, and pretty much anything down to a hand grenade works better if it's above your target a little bit.
Right.
But this is so far above, didn't do anything but make a big fishbowl of a globe and went away. But that's when they learned about EMP by blacking out Hawaii for like a week.
Oops.
Dope. Yeah. So, but that was a Nike. So they actually, and they've shot a lot of Nikes. They're 100 miles in 15 seconds. I think 100-mile range. And I'm just fascinated by them. So I'm going to dig into Nike. But I'm fascinated by the technology. Again, go to the SF-88 videos. One of the guys is a launch control center geek, and he goes into some maths and some scary computer stuff. It's pretty cool.
Well, now I'm obsessing over. I got my scientific calculator out because I want to know how many nautical miles per second 14,000 knots is. So
I can't math.
I will resist. I was saying it wrong. I was thinking of it wrong. Everything. I will do the math later.
Couldn't remember
because now I'm obsessed.
The only speed I remember was the Hercules is Mach 3.5 thereabouts, and so they built these sites. And when you say missile site, so there were 2 Nike facilities, one near kind of in the direction of Buffalo Gap, Texas, south of Abilene, kind of south and east, and the north at what is Fort Phantom Hill, the lake. It's out there. So for one missile battery, you had the launch facility, and then you had IFC, independent, integrated, whatever, fire control, something with an I, and then fire control. So you had a radar station, you had a launch pad, pretty much. Yeah. It was all underground. Now, when you the launch system was underground, but and immediately you see that and talk about all the stuff that they had underground. You think, well, that's so, if you get hit by a nuke. No, that's because
3.8 nautical miles per second.
See, I can sleep now. When they touched off one of those things, you see a model rocket go off, and it's kind of a whoosh, and they go. These lit 4 solid rocket boosters at the same time, and it's more like a gunshot. It popped off the pad so hard that it would vaporize anything around it. So there's no people, no other missiles, there are other missiles, but they're further away. So all that was just to protect the infrastructure. So they built these facilities with, like the launcher would have a place to receive, assemble, test the missiles. And they roll them underground. All this is done by hand, no motor vehicles. And they would go on rails underground, sort of like lined up side by side underground, like bullets in a like rounds in a rifle magazine or pistol magazine. Mm-hmm. They'd put them up one at a time, pop them off, and that's it. They could fire one at a time, and each battery had typically, I think they said 12 with different payloads, and they had ways of switching them around. I was amazed at how it all worked. In short, one radar looked for targets. One radar looked at the missile. One radar tracked the actual target. So one's looking for things, and one goes, aha, I found it, and here it is. Mm-hmm. So, and then one weren't running the missile, and there's another one somewhere. I'm missing one. So they would fire the thing. They had a computer in They call it a van. It's like a container, a cargo container. They had a single computer, a battery of computers with 4K of computing power. 4K. Right? So 4K, if you figure your MacBook is probably 17,000 trailers worth of, is what this guy said, like 17,000 trailers. But anyway, so one radar is watching. One radar is sending commands, communicating with the missile. And it would predict a point for the missile to go. So it goes up and then out. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to get ahead of the target and explode. They used to be conventional. So the way typically those would work is they would explode in front of it, and just it's a cloud of metal, gums up engines, goes through stuff, kills people, shoots an airplane down. Doesn't run into it. They weren't that accurate then. Then they figured out, hey man, this airburst thing worked out pretty well. Let's just cram it full of nukes. Because they didn't know how many airplanes they would use. They'd been told sometimes hundreds. There's ways to hide them. Mm-hmm. They would stack them. They can't. Those days there were countermeasures. So there's another device that was used to calculate the time that it would detonate. So all of this would happen. They would go, okay, the airplane's here and the missile's here, and it would calculate here. And yet another system would say, all right, you need to fly for 10.8 seconds, and it was electromechanical. It is a beautiful piece of art with gears and stuff, and it's in that video. I forgot the name of it. It is fascinating how all that worked, and this is all in the era of vacuum tubes. And now they did. There was a lot of transistor stuff in these because it couldn't take shock and such, and then it would run out and explode. But I highly encourage everybody to watch that SF-88. Video. Definitely. Hopefully I'll remember the name of the production. But the California, one thing I noticed, the California facility had a lot of security problems because they were in California. And in the 60s, Vietnam's heating up, a lot of anti-war sentiment, anti-nuclear sentiment. So there were people that thought that facility was there to start a war. There were people that hated the military in general. A lot of weirdness. And these guys explained all the security problems they had, that they were able to control the roadway and stuff. Apparently the Russians used a deadly electrical fence for theirs with a sniper tower, but the U.S. didn't do that. There was a bay, and this is somewhere outside. It's not San Francisco Bay, but San Francisco was going to be a target, and this little small bay, the Air Force was worried about people coming in by boat or hiking in through the beach and causing problems. Well, in the days of Nike Ajax, this was a very early site. They leaked a lot of fuel. Actually, they didn't leak it. They just contaminated. They filtered through dirt and rocks and washed it into the water, and it was contaminated. Well, turns out it wasn't that bad, and it sort of, petrochemicals do have a way of kind of solving their own problems. The ocean does, because the ocean's been dealing with tar balls for a long time. Well, it went away, but the Air Force was like, you know what? Just let everybody think it's still toxic, because that'll keep the hippies from, they'll be afraid from swimmer attacks. Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. But one of the bonuses of the solid rocket fuel was it didn't do that. And I met a guy, I mentioned in the last podcast, whoever was here, I don't remember, that I met a guy who was a cop, Sky Cop, who worked at the Fort Phantom Hill facility, and I was asking him about the security, and it was nothing like they had in California, but they did have an SP unit that was attached to that took care of it. The guys lived there very tight, 2 at a time. It's everything you thought it would be. I mean, everything they tell you. So
that is something else, man.
Yeah, right here, man. I mean, that could have, technically they could probably. It would have affected us. We would have seen it definitely. Oh yeah. Had they popped off a nuke, there would have been. Yeah, we would have just right down the street.
People would have been looking up in the sky, going, "That's weird. Why? What's that huge fuel trail going up into space from West Texas?" Yeah. We're trying to do all these space programs out here in West Texas right now. Blue Origin is out here near Van Horn, and our international airport is now an international air and space port, where there has never been a space flight and there's no space program
That
going
worked out
on.
like a fart in a space
Yeah,
suit.
I predicted that.
Oh yeah,
But you can go back through my Facebook posts from all that going, yeah, this is never going to happen. But anyway, I digress.
I know it's cynicism.
Yeah.
We've
we've technically had a space program out here for a long time, if you want to count intercontinental ballistic missiles.
There is also there's still weirdness. It's outside of Salt Flat, not Salt Flat itself that we've talked about, or the Guads, but in the area there's a mystery airfield out there. It started. There was a guy. He's no longer has a web page. I don't know if it has anything to do with it. He was.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, he was like a kind of a niche airplane, like a Vans or Ron's, one of those kind of little monoplanes.
Yeah.
And he flew around, and he took a lot of pictures of stuff in the Guadalupe Mountains and crash sites and all. And one day he goes, "Hey, there's an airstrip I've never seen before." Which there are airstrips on every ranch in this part of the country. It's nothing. We see them all the time, and everybody knows. Border Patrol knows where they are. Oh my God, Customs. I've talked to custom pilots and seen their airplanes.
Oh yeah,
those guys could. Yeah, everywhere you can land an airplane, they know about it. And then every time he and this is before social media. He was just putting this on his own little site. He was a ham radio guy. It was under his call sign. Hey, well, the runway got longer. Oh, there's a building. Mm-hmm. There's another building. Hey, that looks like a firing range. Now it's got a helipad, and it got bigger and bigger. And then one day, he got a call from the FAA. And he said, "Hey, you're not watching your NOTAMs, dude. Notice to airmen." He says, "That's restricted. Quit flying there." So it's apparently somehow a military spook training facility.
Huh. I wonder if there is a TFR, and I can find that out on my aviation software very quickly.
Yeah, I haven't looked recently. There was the last time I looked. There was.
Okay.
So
it's near. And where did you say it's near?
Salt Flat.
Okay.
This has been a great episode so far. It's a shame it's never going to see the light of day.
Yeah, we're gonna get shut down.
This is the day we're all gonna get suicided.
We're gonna have a bunch of black SUVs out in front of Matt's house as soon as this thing gets posted to YouTube. Speaking of that, a buddy of mine who's a retired DPS trooper. We have a bunch of friends at this point in our lives who are retired DPS troopers, but a buddy of mine was working out in Ward County. This is, I don't know how long ago, a long time ago, but he said that a Ward County, I think it was Ward County, either Pecos, Pecos County is not where Pecos is. What county is Pecos in? It's not Pecos County. There's Ward County, and then right next to it is... Everybody
listening is screaming at us.
Yeah, everybody's going, it's blah, 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 and we can't think of it.
Ward County, Pecos is Reeves County. Reeves?
Is it Reeves County?
Crap.
Reeves County, Brewster County? I don't know. And anyway, a sheriff's deputy from one of those counties decided to pull over an 18-wheeler that didn't have the markings he thought it should have or something. He had some kind of reason to pull that 18-wheeler over. The 18-wheeler did pull over, and no sooner than that sheriff's deputy had gotten to the driver's door, he was surrounded by black SUVs and federal agents with AR-15s. That thing had a nuclear warhead in the back of it. And they told that sheriff's deputy, get in your patrol vehicle, cancel your call, and move along. And he was like, "No problem, fellas. Have a nice day."
You have a great day, sir. Yeah, I've heard that story and a couple of similar ones. But
yeah,
how about that?
So it happens. I mean, well, you got to keep in mind the interstate. Looking for TFRs in that area. The thing you have to remember is that the interstate system is the interstate defense highway system. That word defense is a big word, and it gets used by the military all the time, whether we know it or not.
Are you kidding, man? Every time a truck driver hauling the tank eats a hamburger at the restaurant by Walmart on the south side by the interstate, we get like 10 Facebook posts. It's Jade Helm again.
Yeah, Jade Helm, yeah. Well, I mean, down to the design of the interstate system. Have you ever wondered why sometimes when you are on the interstate, you go over another road that crosses it, and sometimes you go under and the road goes over? Why is it like that? What's the reason for that? Well, it has to do with evacuation routes. It has to do with ingress and egress routes, and it also has to do with equipment, military equipment, moving in the most efficient fashion. So, yeah, there's a lot of military and civil defense aspects to how our interstate system is designed.
I actually have a kind of a cool segue, speaking of TFRs and such, but I want to mention the pictures. I think I want to do all the pictures kind of at once here. I'm going to put up the one now. I have to write all this down, guys. I'm sorry. The first picture I'm going to show is a Nike Ajax. This is at the Alamogordo Museum, the Space Museum there. I can't remember. It's sitting out front. And it's on an actual transportable trailer, pivoting trailer. Mm-hmm. And this is the Ajax. The white part of the rocket is essentially the same, except the solid rocket booster for the Hercules. And here's the cool stuff that not a lot of people have. I don't see. I pulled the aerial imagery. Now, here's the funny thing about all of this Cold War stuff and how real it was. There are things missing from our maps. If you go get a topo map, we've talked about this before. Hikers, we would use topos, and a lot of people would. These things don't appear, or they will have. It'll say something they're not. You know, there's one marked as a gravel pit and something else. Right. You can pull these up on, of course, and look at them now. But I'll show you here's where I was going with this. These were most of the data around here was shot from an airplane in the 50s. They weren't updated until the 70s. So as long as there was secret shit laying out in the weeds here, they didn't take any aerial pictures of it because it wasn't, that was not classified material. So that was it. Now with satellites and all that, it's over. But I have a picture of it's marked Silo 9. I don't know if that was called Silo 9 or what, 1966, but here it is. You can see the doors. If you go back and look at those now, the doors are gone. But that's what it looked like when the government pitched the keys to whoever got that one. Next picture is Phantom Hill. This is the launch battery, 1967. It looks very pristine. So it's been sitting there less than a year after they pitched the keys to a school district there. And then I have some pictures. Of course, we sail near there. There's a sailing club at Fort Phantom Hill. It's really cool. They race sailboats there. And so we're up and around that area quite a bit. And I drove up to those sites and I snapped a couple of pictures. It's a locked gate and some of the old buildings. There's honestly not much there. The reason I wanted to get on the Fort Phantom Hill site, the launch battery, is because it has not been touched since it was handed over that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. The other ones are privately owned. They're on ranches. I wrote down the name. One of them was Camp Barkley, which I think is like maybe a Christian camp now, and it was around a long time, and it was a military thing before Nike, but it's been other things have been done with it. It's independent fire control, or maybe one of the facilities attached to that. One of the two, one's on a private place. Very clearly, they don't want to deal with me, and the camp, they wouldn't talk to me. Mm-hmm. Phantom Hill belongs to a school district, and they're dealing with me the way government deals with people. And this is the way they dealt with me on all the sites I've asked to go on, telling them who I am and what I'm doing. They just don't answer me. Right. They just won't call you back. Mm-hmm. They just duck you. It's like, man, somebody get in my face and tell me to go piss up a rope.
But that's not what they're doing.
They just don't.
You're dealing with. I mean, you worked in government for almost 30 years.
And then
you're dealing with government employees.
You're dealing with government employees that when they have options A, B, and C, and if you're not.
If you're not option A, B, or C, they ignore you. If I answer the phone and
I can't transfer you to Tim, to Mike, or to Matt, then I just want you to go away.
This involves making a decision. Yeah, I can't do this.
This involves an effort or whatever.
This involves actual effort and thinking. I can't do this.
And so,
please hold.
I talked to an attorney buddy with a lot of experience in dealing with schools, and we figured out a way to get in front of a school board in a dying man's last wish. And he said, I told him, I said, I would wait. Like, I'm already turning gray from this chemo, but like I'd come in on a cane when I'm like transparent white and gray and get in front of a school board like that. And then when the school board's not looking and the people who won't answer my calls, and I'd be like, but so we're not going to do that. It's essentially going to be a bunch of torn down rattlesnake infested places.
Yeah. Okay, so
but
there are no TFRs out there, but that doesn't mean obviously that there's not restricted airspace.
Yeah,
it's the FAA has gotten into this thing where they put TFR stands for temporary flight restriction, but they use them a lot of times indefinitely, forever. There's been one out by Christoval forever where they're testing drones out of they're testing Air Force drones out there. There's one over George Bush the Younger's house in DFW, and it's just so there could be some restricted airspace out there. I didn't pull up a VFR chart, so I can't tell you whether there is.
There was something over it when I looked, but it's been
okay.
Man, it's been 10 years since this happened.
Okay.
I mean, and honestly, the guy's still around. I've still seen him post. I forgot his name. I'm sure he just moved to Facebook like the rest of us. I mean. Yeah. Or whatever. Anybody with egos like ours that wants to talk about what we're doing, it's so much easier to use YouTube and a podcast and a couple of cameras and anything else. But my story, going on to the next topic, when I was in Civil Air Patrol, I was flying air crew on a search. We were flying out of San Angelo, out of the civilian airport there. Name just left me. Stop screaming at the camera, people. I'll remember it.
Where?
San Angelo.
Oh, Mathesfield? The civilian airport? Is that what you said?
SJT, is that Mathis? Anyway, yeah. I think so.
Mathesfield is the civilian airfield at San Angelo near Nasworthy. Yeah,
I think that's where we were flying.
I can't remember its.
This is back in the days. Airplanes would get lost and you couldn't find them. And we were flying air crew, and we were in a T-41, one of the Air Force Cessnas that Civil Air Patrol had gotten. And we were flying along and flying a grid and using a Loran C to navigate. It's a radio triangulation rig, and I was the observer, which is right seat, and I'm checking off the marks on our route, that we're supposed to fly and search, and looking out the window for crashed airplanes. And I plotted it, and the pilot was this old guy, real cool dude, man, one of the best pilots I've ever flown with. And he said, we're going to have to go around and pick this grid up somewhere else. There's an area we can't search. And I said, really? And I'm looking at the map, and I've been through observer school, and I was a pilot too. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, can't fly in front of that. And there's a PAVE-PAWS station in El Dorado. And it's
KSJT is Mathesfield.
Mathesfield, thank you.
San Angelo.
Yeah, Mathesfield.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was the PAVE-PAWS station, a big radar sitting out in the middle of nowhere. And we were told not to fly in front of it. And this is probably circa 1987, 88, 89. Mm-hmm. And so, we didn't fly in front of it, but that was a part of NORAD. Mm-hmm. That's right there just north of the what was later became the Yearning for Zion Ranch, which when that went down in 2010, ? Somewhere
around in there.
Yeah, I was.
You responded to it.
That was
my wife responded to it.
That was my. Yeah, that's the fundamentalist Mormon people with the compound and.
What was the guy's name? Richard something or another? No,
Warren Jeffs.
Warren Jeffs.
Yeah, he was already in jail, but all the rest of them were there. But we'll probably do a whole episode on that. Actually, there's.
We should get
big podcast that wants to interview on that.
Well, we should now that you are retired and my wife is retired from the state. We should have a podcast on that where you guys talk about.
I think so.
Because she responded. I mean, she was taking care of the kids and the wives. I mean, she was there in a much different role than obviously you as a SWAT commander.
Yeah, that was crazy because I was the assistant team commander and the boss was out of town on vacation. Mm-hmm. And like as soon as he passed me the torch and got on the airplane or wherever the hell he went, the phone rang and we were in El Dorado for a week. But one of the nights, they offered to put us up in a hotel, and the room was so nasty that even a SWAT team wouldn't sleep in it.
That's nasty.
Dude, I mean, like blood stalactites on the ceiling, literally.
Yeah.
I have no, like somebody was laying there spitting shit on the ceiling. And I said, man, we're out of here. And the sheriff was cool about it, and the county sheriff is taking care of that that facility. The radar was pulled out and moved to Alaska.
Yeah, they're still up there in Alaska.
Yeah, they're still up there.
But the PAVE-PAWS site itself is still actually technically a government installation. It's just dormant.
It's in a mothball. There's different levels. I actually had to take a test on this. There's different levels of mothballing. Mm-hmm. And it's in the one where the government has it, they can use it, and the way it's worded is strange. It'd be like this: if I went out of town and pitched, Mike the keys to the house, and I said, "Hey man, look, you can live in our house, just feed the dog, keep the lights on, call Tim, Tim's repair service if anything breaks, and whenever we come back, just get out, but don't change anything." So he can't add on rooms, he can't sell it, he can't do anything to make it unusable, and whatever that status is called. That's kind of what it's in. But
you'd have to keep the Hello Kitty toilet.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
But we slept in the parking lot of it there, and I got to look around, but everything was locked and it was dark, and we were tired and hated the world, and I hadn't had a decent shower in a while. But I got to look around, and it's huge. Yeah, very impressive, and that's a phased array, so it's a weird wedge-shaped, futuristic-looking building. The buildings
are these weird, almost triangular obelisk type things.
I'll do a picture here. I didn't put that in my notes.
Well, if I'm okay with the Hello Kitty, toilet, but the My Little Pony curtains might have to be covered up.
I don't know.
Well, you guys can talk about that after the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting place.
My Little Pony's hot. Sorry.
No, the way it worked was very interesting. It's amazing to me that a PAVE-PAWS site, radar site, the way that it worked, the phased array. They were looking for submarines and ships in the Gulf of Mexico, Soviet ships and submarines, nuclear launch platforms, obviously. And they could detect launches pretty much immediately from the Gulf of Mexico, from El Dorado, Texas. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
The whole thing amazed me in the technology. And again, it all gets further and further away as time goes on, right? So, airplanes, short distances, missiles, not so much. They can't go very far. Holy shit, now they can fly around the world, and you only need them in a few places. So let's just put them all in Nebraska. Down to the point where we have nuclear missiles in neighborhoods, pretty much. I mean, these are all on the outskirts, but I mean, they're right there. You could drive to them like you can drive to the movie theater back then.
Oh yeah.
And the people knew they were there, but then the rumors got crazy and people freaked out. And again, security, because man, people were silly about nukes on.
Yeah, security wasn't just about keeping the enemy out. It was about keeping the hippies out and all the people.
Yeah,
all the
and there
crazies.
Was the equal rank, equal knowledge. When everybody was in pairs, there were places you couldn't go in a facility, missiles and on leave and things like that, unless you were with someone who was of equal rank or in a window with equal access. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, these guys were forbidden to do things that a lot of soldier sailors and airmen could do, but to prevent any weirdness, the Russians did the same kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just an amazing chunk of history to me. I hope everybody else enjoys it.
I have been as close as I could get to that PAVE-PAWS site. We've come back from hill country motorcycle trips and kind of gone by it, and you can kind of see it off in the distance, but there's not really a way to get to it.
Yeah, and they won't talk to me about it.
Yeah, the airspace there is all Class G airspace. Yeah. So I've thought about, I should bring one of my bigger drones and just try to fly over it and get some. I don't think there would be a problem with that, but you can't get into it anymore. For one thing, as I understand it, that place is just a breeding ground. It is a den of rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah.
And because they can't do anything with it, it has to be left in the state in which it's in. It has just become a giant viper den. So it's actually very, very dangerous at this point, especially during certain times of the year, for them to let anybody in for a tour or to take pictures or, and plus it's a government facility. They're not going to want you to do that anyways, But it's hard to explain to a local sheriff with the keys to the gate, or to a local fed down there, hey, look, we're just history geeks. We're just military and technology geeks, and we do stupid stuff. We fly high power rockets. We just want to go look. We just want to take some pictures.
We should just call ourselves independent journalists, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we should do. We're independent journalists.
Fun fact for the fun fact file, here in Midland, Texas, the old Texas Instruments building went through a very similar thing because they made military products.
Yep.
And I knew one of the engineers there who occasionally drank too much and said stuff he shouldn't.
Yeah.
And they made some stuff, and
yes, they did.
Nothing nuclear, but a lot of electronics. And when the building closed and they moved away, I was a patrolman, and we had to answer fire alarms there. And there was a lot of weirdness in what went on, and the place had been closed for a number of years, but it looked like it was shut down for the weekend. I mean, it was clean.
Yeah.
And a guy explained to me who was there that because of a similar mothballing rule, they had to be shut down the same way. And he explained it all to me, and it's been years. And
has to do with probably preserving tooling for some sort of a defense purpose.
Yeah, something like that. Tim, would you hand me that Ziegenbach right there? 'Cause
yeah.
I got a toast out, and I don't have any beer.
All right.
My stomach's good, so I'm going to drink at least another one. You the man. So
no problem, sir.
Yeah, and it's weird. Being a kid, you're scared about it. You saw the movies and all.
Mm-hmm.
And now as an adult, being more fascinated about the times with the espionage and the technology and such. And to go back and drive by that old guard shack that's sitting by that weird road.
Oh yeah,
off the county road. Oh, that was a missile site right next to Joe Bob's farm, and so
right.
It's that makes it all so real to me, that little chunk of history.
Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons that I like digging into this kind of stuff, is because there is a reality to it that you are very tempted as a well-fed, beer-drinking American with all the creature comforts and pizza at the door in 30 minutes or less. It's very easy not to think about this stuff and not to be cognizant of it. And there is a framework of hierarchy and technology and military protocol surrounding us at all times. And kudos to the American government for setting up a situation where most people don't bother to think about it most of the time.
It's just, again, having worked in government all my career, all the levels, and thinking about how often they screwed up my travel orders. Mm-hmm. And to build a dozen silos in Abilene, Texas, in a year. But that was the and then we go back to World War II, and we've talked about that ad nauseum here. That being a World War II air base and being a part of the war, when you can hardly physically get any further away from it than West Texas, the German prisoners of war in Alpine and all that. That's all amazing. It makes history real when it's that far away and it's right in my backyard.
Yeah, well, this gives me another idea for another podcast. And
hey, cool, man. We'll write it down.
Yeah, we'll have to get Cliff in here, because he and I had a pretty long conversation about it, talking about how the dualities of government can build nuclear missiles, or at least it could at one time, but it can't. Do these simple little mundane things.
Screw up. Can't get an NCO a hotel room.
Well, there are some equally interesting conversations to be had in the private sector, and that little melding area where private sector and government intermingle with one another.
Yeah.
And we can title it, if we decide to do it, "Why Can't We Build Things Anymore?"
I'm in for that.
I think it'd be really
interesting. You weren't a part of this conversation, but Cliff had a conspiracy theory. That we missed, that Cliff Sykes and Mike Montalvo are actually the same person.
Oh, and that's why
they never been here at the same time.
That's another podcast. You have to dispel that conspiracy theory.
So we had a very humorous conversation, which I'll probably read, about what we could actually talk about. We came up with something very stupid for all of us to talk about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be
good.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
So
we'll probably shoot that in a couple of days. I've got a window of inside of a week when my brain works and I'm not all, and I'm not quite so pale and all that stuff. And so want to get that one. We may shoot that one the next couple of days whenever you're
that's
free.
awesome.
So,
yeah, then we can have VR and some beer. You guys can sit in here and do a podcast for an hour, and I'll go have drinks with Nicole in the other room until you guys are done, and then we'll.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Jim Storms is going to be back around Thanksgiving, and I have chemo that week. I think maybe not. Depends on my blood work. Oof, it's probably all the beer I can drink tonight. Getting the hiccups. But we're going to do an old guy gaming episode.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I want me and Jim Storms to do gaming. I need the younger guy, and then Jim and I from back in the 80s. Jim's a current gamer. I'm getting into it now with my downtime, and it's really good for my brain with all that's going on with me. So, so good, man. One conversation we knocked out. We got 3 topics coming. But if anybody knows anyone from the missile crews, and if you're a missile crewman, you're going to comment on YouTube, get to Midland, Texas, and come down here and shoot a podcast with me.
Be on the podcast.
Yeah, I would love it. Those guys are everywhere, and everyone I've seen, talk to their grandfather before he croaked and put it on YouTube. It's fascinating stuff. We love those stories. We would love to have you. I don't care if you turn wrenches on the gantry. I want you here. That would be really cool. And we probably screwed all the facts and numbers up, but
it's what we do.
Yeah,
man.
we do that, and
we make mistakes in pursuit of accurate knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were going to bring this up at all. The missile that's at San Jacinto. Is that nuclear?
Yeah. So that is an interesting. Okay, we're going to run a little long, guys. The missile, not San Jacinto, at Goddard.
Goddard, sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I got curious about that one time. That used to be on the south side of the building. If you go back and look before,
right in front of the main doors.
Yeah.
It was painted white, and it had
was
Air
painted
Force markings.
white with that. I could see it outside of my math class, which I was thinking about building a model rocket, but I couldn't understand the balance on that thing. And it was Mr. Garcia. He's one of my first fencing coaches too. Anyway, and they made it had that was where the bus lane was, and they took that out and they moved it to the corner and repainted it. And I looked for that and tried to figure out what that thing was. There's a guy, German guy, I've talked about him before on this podcast on the rocket episode, Andreas Parsch.
Yeah.
You think we have weird hobbies. That guy made an online catalog of every missile that anyone has ever shot. Ever! And, I mean, he's even cataloged crap that we wouldn't consider in this day and age.
He's doing God's work, man.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do that.
Airplanes from the 30s that were radio controlled to shoot out with machine guns that got a designation number. He put it on there. Anyway, I emailed him, and he sent me a picture.
And he was like, bang, that's the GAM 63 Rascal.
Yeah, GAM 63 Rascal. I've got a blog post on it. Tim has
I've got a video
on it.
Yeah, here if you're watching on YouTube and you want to watch it after this, it's called "This School's Mascot is a Nuclear Missile."
Yeah. Long story short, air-launched nuclear missile that was a piece of shit. Used hydrazine. They thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, hydrazine.
They couldn't hit anything with it.
Sheesh.
That was a W-31, right?
No, it was designed to carry the W-5 warhead.
W-5. Okay, different warhead.
Yeah.
The ones that were, I think, airframes that were never fueled got sent away to be back when they did stuff like that to be static models.
As far from what the research I've done, 3 or 4 are known to exist, and one of them is sitting at the marching field at Goddard Junior High.
It's missing a fin.
They took a fin off of it. I don't know why they did that.
I can tell you why.
Probably to keep the kids from messing with it.
It was a folding fin. And the reason that fin folded was that's how they stuck
it on the bomber wing.
Right. It went to fit on a bomb rack because they had these big, giant, fat fins. And they either didn't have the parts to do it, or the parts were taken off and used for something else, or they never got the fin. Yeah. So, man, and it trips my rocket builder OCD. I just want to build a fin and just stick it on there. But yeah, Goddard rocket GAM 63 Rascal, and Tim did a great job, and I've got a written blog on it too.
Yeah, all you need is just some cardboard and some duct tape, and you can just
fix it. I've flown rockets on on actually less.
You'll have to make sure to link all of that stuff in the description of this for the people watching on YouTube.
Hey, and also I want to ask, since we actually have the viewership of like a 4 a.m. local news station, right? We talked about that. If anyone knows, I forgot the guy's name. His first name is Renee, with the VFW post in Odessa, took possession of the Scorpion tracked cannon, tracked artillery piece, and Hawk missile from the American Legion in Odessa when they got their torch.
Really?
Yeah, there was everybody thinks it's a tank. I was corrected by both of my uncles who took me there when I was a kid, who were both tankers, that it is not. It is tracked artillery. And it's a M48 Scorpion.
It sat out there forever.
I'm not going to, I don't even bring my phone here anymore because I'll get lost. I think it was M48 Scorpion. It was kind of it didn't work out real well. It was a tracked artillery piece. Looks like a tank. And then the missile out there. So the Hawk missile came after the Nike, and I have seen pictures during scary times of Hawk missiles in like suburban areas. They're smaller, more accurate, active radar. I don't remember. I'm not going to get into it. Solid propellant again. They could just pull it by truck, throw it out, point at shit and shoot it. Anyway, they had a Hawk and the Scorpion, and a guy named Renee, I think, got them both when they built the torch because they had to put a pad out there. I'd love to know where that stuff is, because kids my age, we used to go play on that stuff. You can't play on the rocket. It was too high, but we used to climb on that Scorpion.
I would love to know where that mobile Hawk battery is. I believe there's one of those at White Sands Missile Range Missile Park.
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of Hawks
and there's
out there.
a bunch of Hawks. There's a bunch of everything out there. That's another video I have on mine.
Yeah, Tim has a fantastic video on that one.
Man, that's good. That's something, if you're interested in this, if somehow or another you're another Uber geek who's going to be one of the couple hundred people who actually hear this podcast, and you are interested in this sort of stuff, and you have not been to White Sands Missile Range Missile Park, you've got to put that on your list of things to do.
Well, plan a weekend. You can go to the Alamogordo Space Museum and White Sands in the same weekend.
Yeah,
and you stay like Cloudcroft, and holy crap, we'll wind up in another episode.
Heck
yeah, good times. But all right, I think that's it, guys.
Yeah, rambling about
hey man,
geeky
it's
stuff.
Been a great time. This is what I do. I'm amazed at the watch time, how much of this podcast people watch compared to other stuff. So thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it, and I'm still doing it because people are telling me to keep doing it. So.
Hey, I'm enjoying every one of these I get to do with you guys.
I love it.
And the ones that I'm not in, they're always fun to listen to. I think that, especially if you're a Texan or a West Texan in particular, you're prone to like this kind of stuff that we talk about because so much of it is local. And so definitely keep doing it. Don't stop doing it.
Well, for me, any excuse just to kind of hang out with you guys is a good excuse.
Hey, fantastic, dude. We have
the pleasure is all on this side of the table.
Just mostly this side that I'm talking about.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.
There I go, thinking I have friends again.
So now let's put Tim on the VR for the first time and video him and laugh at him.
Yeah. Okay.
Sound like a good time.
Good times.
VR's on an upcoming episode. Cheers, gentlemen.
Steam Valve Index?
Virtual reality. Yeah, Valve. Shit.
Yeah, Valve Index.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. We're going to go have some more fun.